Good afternoon, Cary Rotary Club. Good afternoon. Oh, hang on a second, I got to turn on the speaker here. I always like echo. Good afternoon, Cary Rotary Club. Welcome to the Ides of March. I suspect we'll have some memorable events today, hopefully not quite as dramatic as old Julius experienced. To lead us off, can I ask Darren Gay to lead us in the invocation, the pledge, and the singing of God Bless America?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity for this wonderful group to come together on this wonderful day that you've given us. Thank you for the camaraderie and the ability for us to meet and learn about things that are going on in our local community, Lord, and around the world. We just ask that you be with the leaders, the world leaders, as we continue to have this situation happening in Europe. We ask that you be with those families that are being displaced, and just help them, hope that they will find their way back to their homes and begin to rebuild their lives, Lord. Bless us food to the nourishment of our bodies, as your precious holy name we pray. Amen. Our Father, to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
And also with you, Darren.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, can I ask Ben Shiver to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians today? Ben.
Thank you, President Bob. I'd like to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarian today also. First, let me call on David Coulter to introduce his guest.
Thank you, Ben. Ben Straub is a good friend of mine. He's been here before and he's here again. And I think he has some interest in further experience with our club. So Ted, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ted.
You have two guests you'd like to introduce.
Well, I do. I have a guest that I want to reintroduce to the group. Brant Rubin joins us again. Brant and I are moving forward in the membership process, so he continues to join us. Brant.
Happy to be here.
Welcome, Brant. And on behalf of Harold Bennett, who is virtual today, I also want to welcome again Aidan Jones. So Aidan and I are also in the throes of that process. We all remember what that was like, right? So welcome back, Aidan.
And we have a visiting Rotarian with us today, David Granger from the Wilmington Rotary Club. David,
Welcome, David.
Let's get one more round.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for joining us today on a beautiful spring day. A couple of very quick announcements. The first thing I wanted to just make sure everyone was aware that one of our club members, Howard Manning, has been hospitalized recently with pneumonia. There was a notice sent from Dorcas that he had been admitted to the hospital, I guess it was last week. The family is asking for some privacy around all of this, but they have shared that his recovery is going well. He expects to go home. He had been on a ventilator, so that kind of speaks to the seriousness, but he is ready to go home probably later on this week. If you would like to send a card or a letter or remembrance to him, I'm sure that he would appreciate it. But in the meantime, let's all keep Howard in our thoughts. Let me also share with you a letter we got this week from Meals on Wheels, addressed to the Cary Rotary Club Foundation. Thank you so much for your $1,000 donation to Meals on Wheels of Wake County. With your support, we'll continue to stand up against hunger and isolation for the exponentially growing population of Wake County seniors. We thank you for your generous contribution and for standing up to take care of our senior community. Contact us with any questions. So sincerely, Mary, Kate, Keith. So you all made this happen. Thank you to everything. And thank you for that. Really great to support Meals on Wheels because that covers two of our primary objectives, right? Seniors and hunger. So we get to leverage our efforts. Can I call on Renee Spell? Renee, share with us some information about the district conference.
Yes, thank you, President Bob. Our district conference is coming up in May, the 13th and 14th, and we are going to be responsible for a gift basket. It's going to be a door prize. Every club is submitting one. And so over the next month, I'm going to just make the offer out there. This is a time for if you have any business swag or anything that you want to contribute to the basket, that would be included. And it would just give us an opportunity to let whomever receives it know a little more about our club and who all is building our membership. So over the next month, I'll have a container or something here for you to drop off anything you would like to contribute. And we'll have someone take that over for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll take the opportunity to promote the conference itself in person for the first time in several years in Winston-Salem, May 13th and 14th. That's a Friday, Saturday combination. Also upcoming on the calendar is our District Day of Service. So I'll ask you to please mark your calendars for Saturday, April 23rd. That's the day after Earth Day. The focus of the district service is going to be on the environment. And so we've arranged for service working with Krista Lemery in the town of Cary. They are doing garden work days in support of our first responders. So we've sort of adopted Fire Station 5 over on High House Road, and we'll go out there and do some soil remediation. Is that the right term, Pat? What do they call it? Soil amendments, plant some pollinators, some vegetables, and do a little maintenance. It's a great family opportunity as well. So I invite you to get your spouse and children involved as well. April 23rd at noon at the Cary Fire Station 5. Also on our agenda, important piece of business is, you remember 30 days ago, I shared a proposed slate of officers for the club in 22 and 23. I've shown those on each of the tables. Let me get it shared here online. So I have not received any further nominations to amend this slate of officers. So I'd ask for a motion for a vote.
Mr. President, let's move to a vote.
Great. Do I have a second? All in favor of this slate of officers, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much. And congratulations to our excited to have 4 new members of the board based on this slate of officers. All right. So my kids taught me a new phrase recently. FOMO. Anybody know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. I'm here to prevent FOMO. Thursday, March 31st, this club is going to attend a Carolina Hurricanes game. Don't miss out. Don't miss out. We've got about 10 tickets left for our group. We're excited to be going out to the game against the Montreal Canadiens. So please let myself, Eric Schmidt, Don Finkbeiner, Eric's the closer. Don's the cajoler. I'm the name taker. So choose who it is that you want to come and see. But indicate your interest now, and we'll go out and have a great time. Also, if there is anyone that has an interest in sort of pooled travel, we'll have access to parking passes. But if we're looking at demand for a shuttle of some kind or kind of transportation. So if you're interested in that, let one of us know and we'll kind of look into that and see if it might be feasible. Eric, Don, anything else that you wanted to say about that?
No, if you would like to attend, please see me. I have the list here. I'll be glad to add you to it. Just for those who have never been before, it is a lot of fun. We always have a great time.
Loud, energetic, fun, and red. So especially if you're a Wolfpacker, there's no reason for you to. Emphasis on loud.
And what is the date again?
March 31st, Thursday, March 31st, at 7 p.m.
We need the checks.
Yeah, well, we have the tickets. We need the people. Yes, sir. $66.50 each. See me and I can provide you with more details. Yes, sir.
Bob would never tell you this, but he's already paid for the tickets, and I think that was pretty generous to Bob. So if you committed to go, please pay Bob as soon as possible. And I thought that was very nice of Bob.
Well, you're stretching credibility there a little bit, Paul, but I appreciate I'll take the kudos.
Yeah, because you're gonna split it with Don.
Yeah, that's it. The profits, all profits go to us. All right, well, without further ado then, let us move to our program. I ask David Coulter to introduce.
Thank you, President Bob. I'm pleased to introduce Tom Price to you today. Tom is a graduate of Duke University, his master's, BA and his master's in electrical engineering. He spent most of his career, I think, as an entrepreneur in electronics, helping startups to develop. I think he's also been a pretty good consultant too. I met Tom through an OLLI class. If you know, that's the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And the class that he taught was Gizmos and Gadgets. It was really a fascinating class. And he often started from kind of the baseline of discussion, like 1G, and then told us about how we got up to 5G. But there are so many aspects of the class. I highly recommend it to you. But today he's going to talk to us about self-driving cars. And I think that's going to be a fascinating experience. How many of you have an electric car right now? I know a couple people do. I think that's going to be a really interesting experience going forward. So without further ado, Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. We talk about a pretty day. Any of you were hesitant to move to North Carolina? Days like this prove it was the right decision, right? David, thanks for the intro. The gadgets class, we've been actually doing it. A partner and I have been doing it for about 20 years. And I went back and looked at some of our material from 20 years ago, and it bears no resemblance to technology today. We talk about everything from GPS to the internet to how computers work, robots, drones, whatever, where the model is, if you could take the top off and just wanted to know the basics about how it works, and then maybe how you use it, and maybe some buying suggestions and that kind of thing. That's what the class is all about. This particular one I'm going to talk about today is the self-driving car. My partner and I tag team a lot of these. What Doug would do is introduce with the technology of self-driving cars. And then what I do is say, okay, well, what's the impact if we really had a lot of self-driving cars? How might that impact our lives economically, socially, et cetera? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. The evolution, you're starting to see some of it in if you bought a new car within the last 5 years. There's things like blindside monitors and speed control and automatic braking and those kind of things. Those are the pieces of what will make a self-driving car viable. When's it going to happen? Well, there's versions of it that are out there now. It gets bad publicity at times because there have been accidents, there have been deaths, but very few. Everybody asks, well, when are we going to have ubiquitous use of self-driving cars? Who knows? I would say the technology is close. Some would say within 5 years, some would say within 10 years that you'll have a car that is really truly self-driving. It's close. When will it be ubiquitous? When will it mainly be the car on the road? I don't think anybody knows, but a lot of people are studying that. And that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. And I'm not getting it to go. Yeah. There we go. Okay. I'm going to have to go through a couple of these first slides. I'm going to have to go through a couple of these slides pretty quickly because I got a lot of things I want to discuss. Suffice it to say that there's a whole lot of companies that are involved in this. All the major car manufacturers, a lot of private companies, include non-car companies like Google, Apple, et cetera, are involved. And in that slide, you can see about 80 companies have been involved in, and multiple millions of miles have been driven with these cars in a driverless mode. Always with a real person in the car with a brake pedal and a steering wheel to back it up. But millions of miles have been racked up, and with relatively few accidents and deaths. And it's something that bugs me a little bit. If there was an accident and there was a death with a Tesla car, it was in the news. Everybody talked about it. In that same day, how many people died in a car accident in a regular car? It just never comes up. So the news was all covering these few incidences. If you actually look at the number of deaths even in these early technology cars, it's much smaller per million miles driven than it is when you and I are out on the road. I think about when I go to Walmart and I look at all the people pushing those carts around, and I realize every one of them is going to go out and get in a car that weighs about 2 tons, and I got to face up with every one of them. So I think I'll feel better someday when maybe there's more electronics controlling that than it is today. There's some challenges, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes on a couple of these just to give you a feel for what's going on. It turns out that probably 80% of the technology that it takes to make a driverless car, it has to use to even get the car out of the garage and onto the road. Just the idea of trying to park in a very small limited space, then backing out and making sure there's no bicycles or cars in the area you're backing into. And then the real challenge is when you start to get on the road. This car has to it has to figure out which way you want to go. And then figure out what lanes it needs to watch for vehicles. And then figure out how fast those vehicles are coming and when is it appropriate time to back out and go. And so it's chewed up and used a lot of its technology just to get you on the road. Tricky intersections. How many of you are familiar with 5 Points in Raleigh? I mean, that's a scary intersection to begin with. And you can imagine a smart car trying to go into that, trying to figure out where the traffic lights are, which lanes are doing which, where cars are coming from multiple directions, et cetera. And so intersections like that really put a challenge for these developers. But they figured most of it out. They're getting close. Snow and rain continue to be a huge problem. And the technology is getting better, but it's not there yet. And then a couple of interesting challenges. One's filling the gap. If you're out driving, you typically want to honor the car in front of you by some number of car lengths. Some of us want fewer car lengths than others want, but you want a reasonable gap. Well, what's been driving the people that are out with these experimental cars is the car honors the gap and it gets further away depending on how fast you're going. And what do you and I do in our cars? We see a big gap, we jump in it, right? When you jump in it, the smart car has to back off again. And it was driving these people crazy because the smart car just being taken advantage of by you and I. But it's going to honor those gaps, and it has to do that in order to be really safe. Four-way stops. Originally, the algorithm for the four-way stop in the car was you come up, you stop, you watch the other cars come up. When they stop, you follow the algorithm, and then you go. It turned out that you and I don't stop at four-way stops. We creep, right? So what these cars were doing is they were coming up and they'd see you creeping on the side, and they said, well, I'm not going because he's moving. Well, it turned out these cars could never get through the intersection because there was always somebody creeping somewhere, right? So they had to tweak the algorithm to say, okay, creeping means stop. And you had to interpret what my intention was as a regular driver into what was really going on. And too careful. This Waymo, which is Google's company that developed these cars, they do a lot of their experimenting in San Francisco area. And apparently San Francisco drivers were complaining because these silly smart cars were going the speed limit. You know, they were slowing down at intersections and waiting for the pedestrians to completely cross before they turn, et cetera. And it was driving the locals crazy. I think that'll go away as we get more of the smart cars going, but there's a lot of regular drivers that got very anxious and frustrated with these automated cars. One of the big, okay, the car itself has this ability to measure distances and figure out what lane it's supposed to be in and all those neat things. One of the other real advantages a smart car can have is it can talk to other smart cars. That's what the mesh network is all about. And what that means is if you're coming up to do a left turn and there's 4 cars in front of you to make that left turn, the first car goes out and makes the turn, and the second car comes up and waits to get a reasonable gap, make sure there's nobody coming, then they go, then the next car goes, and finally you go. And in fact, if you measure the distance from the first car to you, it's probably 20 or 30 car lengths before you actually got to make the turn. If those were mesh cars, they would say, I know when you're moving, and I'm going to move as soon as you move. And it'll look like a convoy coming up to that turn, left turn. And 1, 2, or 3, or all 4 cars may go, and they may not be more than a foot apart from each other. But they've been talking to each other, and they know if the car in front of them is going to speed up or slow down, but they can move as a convoy through that. You'd see the same thing on highways. You'll see a convoy of smart cars going, and they'll be 2 feet apart. You know, a smart car could do that to you if you were driving a regular car, but it would drive you crazy because here's a car right on your tail. So it won't do that to you. But if it had another smart car with it, it'd say, yeah, I know what's going on. We know what's going on. If we come up to an intersection, there's no stoplights, no stop signs. It's just, here comes a mesh car, here comes a mesh car. Okay, but you go first and I'll follow you through. And they talk to each other and make it happen. That only happens when you have all smart cars, right? Now, when will that happen? I don't know. This parking themselves, this is cool. Wouldn't it be nice when you get to your office building and you want to go in, you don't have to worry about parking the car. You just get out of the car and the car goes and finds a parking place. So that in itself would be a real nice advantage. The added advantage is in a typical parking garage, you have to have a driving lane throughout the facility, and each car has to have access to that lane, okay? If they were smart cars, they could park 2 or 3 deep and talk to each other. And if the car that needed to get out was 3 cars deep, it would signal the 2 cars behind him, back out, let me out, and then you guys go back and then fill the slot. So you could fill a parking garage 2 or 3 times as many cars as you can today. And then track and avoid accidents. I mean, this is something we're already starting to see some benefit. If you have GPS, you know about the ability to see when the traffic is bad ahead of you, or if there's a blockage and it'll find an alternate route. Well, a smart car would be able to take care of it, take advantage of those same kind of capabilities. Some interesting facts. 8% of car accidents are because of the equipment failure. 92% of them are because of what you and I do or don't do. Think about what the potential reduction in accidents there could be if you had a vehicle that could take care of avoiding most of those errors. And that's one of the pushbacks I give people. Say, well, until it's perfect, I don't want to hear anything about it. Well, bud, you get in a car every day with somebody who's not perfect, right? So this thing only has to be so much perfect, only close to perfect to be better than what you and I are. But of course, the technology should be able to get you very close to being very reliable with very few accidents. And the other interesting thing is, besides your house, your largest investment is likely your car. And where does it sit? Unused 96% of the time. It sits in your driveway. If you and I, as average investors, looked at that situation, we'd say, what a waste of an asset to only use it 4% of the time. Which brings up the really interesting point of, if these cars could take care of themselves, do I need to have my own car? And we're going to get into that. So the new paradigm is, you don't own your car. There's some entity that owns all these electric vehicles. And they've done a lot of modeling, and they say that they could, with fewer cars than on the road today, they could have a car available to you within 5 minutes of when you request it. So your typical scenario in the morning is when you get up, you get your smartphone out or whatever, get on your phone and say, okay, I need a car at 9:30 or 8:30 or whatever. And within 5 minutes of that request, if you wanted it that soon, a car would show up. You get in the car, and it take you to a destination, then it would go wandering off and service somebody else. And the model says there could be a significant reduction in the number of cars needed. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it changes the whole model of transportation. I don't own an asset. I use a service. And that point is that now you've had a significant reduction in the number of products that need to be built, which in turn has a lot of impact. And we're going to talk about that. If you're interested, I would recommend this article. He goes into a wide variety of the impact if you have driverless cars. And I would just recommend that. The key would be just do the search on Jeff Nesnow 73, and you'll find that article. Fascinating stuff. And part of what I've been talking about today came from that article. Studies anticipate that you could reduce the number of cars by 30 to 90%. That you could reduce accidents by 75%. I don't know why the number's even that low. Seems to me it should be more up in the 90% range, but it's safe to say it should be in this reduction about 75%. And then reduced auto deaths, they say 60%. And it says reduced insurance rates. There's a bit of a debate there. What we're finding in today's cars, with all the technology, blindside monitors, distance measuring, et cetera, that there are fewer accidents per million miles driven than there used to be. That's the good news. The bad news is the cost of repair is higher, right? So what is the net effect? From the studies I've seen, the net effect to date is it's pretty much a wash. You know, we got fewer accidents, but they cost more. There's no significant benefit. The studies say that as time goes on and the cars get smarter and we figure out the electronics and make them more cost effective, that you should see a significant reduction in the overall cost of the vehicle and in turn a reduced insurance rate. So what's the potential impact? There's some scary stuff here. One is, if you don't need as much parking space in towns, in cities, for two reasons. One is that trick I told you about, 3 cars deep parking. The other one is these cars don't park except to get charged. They're out roaming around servicing people, right? That's how you can have so many fewer cars. And that leaves a lot of area in urban areas that could be used for something else. That's where a lot of sociologists get involved and other people about, well, what do we do? What could we do if we had extra space in our urban areas? Well, we could increase the number of apartments. We could increase the number of commercial establishments, but we can make parks and other kinds of things. So there's if we anticipate it properly, there could be some real benefits to having more space in urban areas. And then again, because cars can convoy and because you get into a taxi service where they can pick up multiple people to go to multiple destinations and things, there should be a significant reduction in the amount of highway space that you need as well. And this is an interesting stat. I'm not sure, but I've lived it. 30% of your miles in town are spent looking for a parking place, right? I mean, I can believe that. I'll tell you one cute story. Our minister told us that he said, it's a semi-parking story. He said, I went by the donut shop and they had the hot donuts fresh. And he said, Lord, if there's a parking space in front, then that'll tell me that I should get it. He said, in my prayer, I'm going to answer the 6th time around. So you could have higher density urban living, but there's an interesting twist. You could have expanded suburban living. If you gave me the opportunity, when I get up in the morning and I get ready for work, to be told, you don't need, if you want to have breakfast on the way, take something with you. If you want to read something, if you want to prep for the day's work, you can do that on your way to work. Oh, and when you get out, if you want to relax and detune on the way home and read something or take a nap or whatever, you can do that. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of value in that to me. And you could actually be encouraging me to move further from work, right, than closer. And of course, in today's remote working model, that could just add to it. So there's an interesting push and pull. And again, this is where studies are going on to say, well, which way will it go? Will we see more suburban living or more urban living or what? Trolleyology, it sounds like a cute name. It's actually a pretty serious study. Trolleyology is dealing with the ethics of driving. Let's say you had a situation where all of a sudden a child jumps out in front of you and and you're not going to be able to stop in time. And the only choice you have is either you're going to hit that child or you're going to veer to the left and there's a lady walking across the street. And in either case, you could take somebody out. And those are your only two choices. You and I are forced to make a decision at that point. We don't have a lot of time to think about it and we will react somehow, right? But when you turn to a developer who's developing the analogs for these cars, you're going to say, when that situation happens, what are you going to do? And you got to think about it. And there's a whole lot of serious thought going into those kinds of trade-offs that you're now going to have time to think about and program to deal with. And it's a whole another part of driving and experiences that we've never had to deal with before. All right, that's good news. There's point, there's counterpoint, right? You're not going to get these kind of capabilities to at least have 75% penetration. Heaven knows when that will be, how it will happen. But you're going to need a lot of these smart cars out working with each other to really realize a lot of these benefits. Will people trust driverless cars? Well, I don't know. The first people when they got into Model A, did they trust that Model A? When they first got on an airplane or had an opportunity, were they willing to get on the airplane? I personally think it will take a while, but I think most of us will finally reconcile ourselves to the fact that I'm willing to get into a vehicle that does not have a steering wheel or brake. Right? There's a concern that if it's so easy for me to get a car, then maybe I won't use mass transit. Well, that's not a plus, Mass transit is a very efficient way to get a lot of people someplace. And if all of a sudden you find, well, I can just zip out and get a car, go where I want to go, rather than going down to the bus stop and getting on. That's a counterpoint, right? That's an issue you'd rather not see happen. The other side of that is, what about people taking the option of a taxi versus using their bike or taking a walk? Not a good news scenario, but one that we need to anticipate and figure out what to do about. So major concerns, who's liable in case of an accident? You got all this technology staring at you. And who's going to take the blame for whatever happened? And a whole lot of lawyers are going to make a whole lot of money trying to figure that one out. This is significant. Well, actually, the next two bullets, they relate to each other. There's a whole lot of people making good livings building cars. And if we reduce that significantly by at least half, there's a whole bunch of people that aren't going to have job opportunities in that area. And then if you add in filling stations and accessories you can buy for cars and all those kind of things, that could have will have a significant impact on industry. And what do those people do next? I mean, we face it now even with robots, et cetera. But I think this scenario, the driverless car scenario, is going to impact that even more. Truck drivers, taxi drivers have the same challenge. We're already hearing it with truck drivers. There are a number of high-tech trucks that, in fact, the only place they need is a driver is when they get to the destination. They do still need somebody to actually back those suckers up in the loading dock. But for 95% of the mileage, it's out on an open road, and in the technology is very easy to apply in that particular case. I'll tell you one interesting story. They're doing it now. There was the ability in these trucks to optimize their performance by changing the timing, et cetera, on the motor. So if you're out on flat level, then they can detune the engine and get better efficiency, but it loses power, but it's enough for flat land. And then when it gets to the mountains, then they switch up. The technology can be remotely controlled. And what these drivers were finding was that the companies, in order to save money, were leaving them in the low power mode, even when they got to the mountains, which was driving the drivers crazy. So there's a case where you have to manage the technology properly. I say it's one of the greatest sociological changes. I mean, there's so many dimensions to this in terms of what psychiatrists, psychologists, sociologists are all going to look at in this and try to figure out what all the impact is going to be. But it could be, and it will be significant. But I'm glad we're worrying about it. So here's what a next generation driverless car might look like. It's a little cube. You get in it, tell it where you want to go, and it takes you there. This cube could have been going from A to C, and you said you wanted to go from B to C. Well, it saw that B was en route from A to C, so it stopped and picked you up and took you on your way as well. So it's a taxi function, but it's a smart taxi function. In fact, it can combine riders along the way. In fact, there was a model of one of these similar to this in NC State a while back. This one, I'm not sure where it came from, but this car, looks pretty comfortable. There's a steering wheel in there. I don't know the story on that, but they broke the code if they provided a steering wheel. The other thing I want to believe is those sweaters around their necks are not neck braces. And with that, that's my summary, and I'm sticking with it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
It seems like all the driverless cars are electric. Is there a reason for that? Is that just where we're going?
Why the driverless cars are electric? Is that the question? Yeah, well, I think it's kind of an evolutionary process. There are a lot of benefits to electric cars. There are some issues with them, but it seems to be pretty clear that the technology is moving that direction. So all the technologists climbed on that bandwagon and said, well, we're just going to keep going that direction, and we're just going to amplify it with electric cars. You could apply it to a gas-powered vehicle for sure, but I think most technology companies that are expecting to play this game are going to be playing it along with playing the ride on the electric car rather than the gas-powered cars. Yes.
The recent discussion about mass transit here locally, the autonomous buses was one of the future statements. Where is that in the mix, and what you're thinking about that?
Well, I don't know a lot specifically about that. What little I know is that the advantage that the mass transit vehicles have is that they run fixed routes. And so in fact, one of the problems is if you wanted to put an electric car in Raleigh, you've got to map all of Raleigh to figure out, because you don't know where that car is going to go. With a mass transit, it's only going to take these thoroughfares. And so they can map a much smaller percentage of the area. And so they should, that one reason they should be able to do it sooner. And I think you're probably going to see that in trucks, long distance trucks and mass transit first. Yes.
We've all seen movies where some car got hacked and then someone did remotely to that car, whatever they so chose. So where are we at with that? You know, that's probably an issue.
I think this, it's the same answer you have with smartphones and internet in general. It's always one, it's a rat race, and it's always going to be an issue. The smarter we get, the smarter the bad guys get, and there's always some ways to break it. But I think a lot of effort is being put into the ability to not be able to break it. But I'll never say it's going to be foolproof. I think we're about done. Yes.
For that car you showed there were several different people in there that were maybe getting off at different spots. How did they convey to that car that they wanted to do that?
You probably would do it to your smartphone. Most likely, just like now you put your address in GPS, you would use your smartphone. You would have said when you wanted the ride, where you wanted to go. And then in turn, the car would have picked it up from your smartphone and said, okay, I'm going to pick you up because I know I can go wherever it is you want to go and I'll take you there. But your smartphone would be the main communication.
Are there implications to what materials are used to build the car?
I don't, that's a good question. I've never thought about it. There might be different technology, like the metals that are used or
Yeah,
plastic
I mean,
or
the
whatever.
picture to me looked like something that wasn't, you know, a 55 Chevy that was going to withstand a lot of force.
Right, yeah. Well, I know that there's been consideration made in impact protection, that the cages are extra careful on that. But in terms of beyond that, I don't have any input.
Tom, thank you so much
Yes,
for
sir.
this presentation today. It's fascinating and very interesting to learn about the potential for the future of self-driving cars. I know there are definitely some people who probably didn't get their licenses at Walmart, so not having them drive would be a positive thing for
Amen.
all of us.
Amen.
As a token of our appreciation, this is a set of gift cards from Jerry Miller, who is
Knowing well.
so excellent. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate your sharing the vision of what the future looks like. I have to confess that as a father of two teenage children that are just getting started on driving, the thought of taking the wheel away from them is actually kind of appealing. Although it doesn't give me the break to stomp on when they come too close. But thank you very much for joining us today. We do have a couple of days to celebrate coming up. Eric Schmidt, thank you for thanking the speaker today. On 18th, I guess that's Friday of this week, Eric will be celebrating 19 years with the Rotary Club of Cary. So congratulations. And online, Rod Brooks is with us on the 20th, which I guess is Sunday. He'll be celebrating 15 years with the Cary Rotary Club. So congratulations. To Rod, our president, incoming president-elect. Or he's an incoming president-elect now. Next week, we've got a great program, another great program in our series. Kathy Moore, who's the superintendent of the Wake County Public Schools, will be joining us for an update. Thank you to Bill and Camille for helping to arrange that. And as a special bonus, I understand there'll be several educators that will take advantage of the opportunity to hear their leader speak to us. So they'll have a chance to meet some guests too. We'll enjoy that presentation over a meal of beef stroganoff with pasta and sauteed squash. In 2 weeks, Beth Mann, audiologist, David has arranged this program, will come and speak to us about assisted hearing devices, which is another thing that might work for my teenaged children. My wife would say I need it, but that'll be fantastic. I do want to thank you, Tom, for joining us. I want to thank our guests, Brant, Aiden, David, thanks so much for traveling up from the coast. We're thrilled to have you with us. I want to thank all the people in the club that helped make the event happen as well. So Darren, Ben, Scott, Eric, and Bill will be in just a moment. And I recognize the gentleman from the left, Paul.
Yeah, just a brief moment, if I may.
Please.
As a couple of days ago, two my family members got out of Ukraine. And they're in Bucharest, actually. We've got 5 more left in there, but thanks for your prayers and support.
Well, we're thinking of that. Many more out there, good fortune. I do spy one of our club members wearing the green. Is there some day that you wanted to recognize coming up, Tim? Why are you wearing green?
I didn't have anything else in the closet.
There you go.
It's St. Patty's Day and everything else, all right? Now, I've been singing Irish songs for a lot of time in my life. And people come up and say, how come Irish songs are so sad? All you gotta do is go back through the history. Ireland has had 3 primary periods of history. Back in the mid-1600s, Cromwell came, drove the people off their farms, wouldn't allow them to keep them where the oldest son would get the whole farm. Everybody had to be split up and that stuff. He destroyed their churches. Tough time. Mid-1800s, they had the potato famine. You don't think that's funny, but that was the cash cow for the Irish back then with potatoes and with the famine. During that time, there were about 6 million people in Ireland. When the famine was over, they had lost 2 million people, either to immigration or death. And then the third major one was in the early 1900s where they had the Civil War. So they got a lot of things that they can think about in their history, and that's probably why some of the songs are a little sad. But my mom had a favorite Irish song, and we're going to share that with you right now. All right. It was something called Danny Boy. Now, when you hear Danny Boy, think about this. This is a mother who's writing a letter to the son who has probably had to emigrate someplace else. And that's what the words are all about. Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the flowers are dying. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be there in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny Boy, I love you so. And when ye come, and all the flowers are dying, and I'm dead as dead I will be, then will ye come and find the place I'm lying, and kneel and say, and I'll be there for me. And I shall hear the soft you tread above me, and for my grave will woman sweet to be. And you shall beg and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. And with that, can I ask Bill Fletcher to lead us out on the 4-way test?
Join me in the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. We are adjourned.